Hello, everyone. I want to extend a warm welcome to everyone joining, both in person and virtually, to our People's Campaign for Parole Justice Teach-In. Today, we are going to be filming, screening a screening the film, The Interview. It is a documentary on the New York State Parole Board, and it'll be followed by a discussion on two criminal justice bills, the elder parole and the fair and timely parole bills. Once passed, these bills will begin to address the crisis of perpetual punishment in the state of New York and also bring our incarcerated elders home. After our discussion, we'll have time for a question and answer section. So if folks who are online can post their questions in the chat, that would be great. And if folks who are in person want, you can just verbalize your question right at the end. Thank you all so much, and we'll get going with the film.
Nobody wants to talk about the worst thing they ever did, all right? Nobody wants to talk about that.
I try to go in there and just be honest. Just be honest. That's all you can do.
I was hopeful that I was gonna be able to go home and be with my son and my mom.
You're being asked to relive a moment that you probably struggled with for a very long time.
Being frank, I was like scared. I figured it would be hostile.
You sit down and, think about, what could you say? What would you say?
My worst period of my life would not forever define me.
As a child, my dreams and aspirations were, I wanted to be an accountant. Numbers fascinated me at one point, and being able to get paid to take care of other people's money just was very appealing.
My fiance and I had plans of kind of doing like the happily ever after thing. We were kind of like twins, so to speak,
I thought at that time, growing up in the 60s, that I would become the next great Puerto Rican baseball player. But, that dream just kept getting dimmer and dimmer until it faded into nothing.
I was convicted of second-degree murder, and my sentence was 15 years.
18 years.
20 years to life.
25 years.
25 years to life.
A patrol car, they actually stumbled on us. And a gun battle ensued. And the police sergeant took a shotgun blast in his face. And he lost his eye vision.
Did a robbery, and in the course of the robbery, 2 people did get shot and 2 people died because of my reckless behavior.
I got arrested because my then boyfriend and I, both of us were crack cocaine addicts. We ended the life of my grandmother to fuel our addiction.
And I made a commitment then that that would be it. I would never hurt another human being.
In '96, when I first went to the parole board, I felt that I was ready.
I'm anxious. I'm super nervous. But I'm hopeful because reading the guidelines for what can possibly get you out or grant you parole, I was asked to, 1, do anger management, 2, substance abuse treatment, 3, do a vocation, learn a skill, and 4, my time. The first 3 of which I completed before my first 5 years.
I had a master's degree. I'm a published poet. I was a published poet by that time.
I had multiple job offers. I was ready to go.
It was around Christmas time, and I said I may show up on my wife's doorstep for Christmas.
When I first got my denial letter, I was disappointed. The second time I got a denial letter, I was disappointed, I was hurt. The third time I got a denial letter, I was disappointed, I was hurt, I was angry.
Went back in 2002, denial again 2 years. 2004, 2006, 2008, 2009, 2011, 2013, and 15. What could I say? What could I do?
2009, 2011, 2013, with no other justification than the nature of the crime.
The nature of your crime, the one issue that you can never change.
Don't matter if you look at this crime 10 years, 20 years, 100 years from now, it's going to be the same. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be the same.
For the interview, it's impersonal. They sit you in a room, there's a big television in front of you, 3 commissioners sitting there, and you're talking to a television.
And each time, right out the gate, we had a discussion about the instant offense. Tell me, how do you take the life of somebody who was always there for you? Make me understand how it was just so easy for you to end her life. My jaw dropped. The tears started flowing. I couldn't get control of myself. I couldn't answer his question because I was so overwrought with guilt. At that time, I was with an abusive boyfriend. So anything he told me to do, pretty much I did. When he decided he wanted to get more money, he went into my grandmother's room and began to suffocate her. I walked in to see him doing this and was threatened with, if I don't help, my son was next, who was laying in the bed right next to her. I spent most of my time crying. I didn't feel comfortable talking to them, you know?
Most of my hearings were just focused on the crime. We did all that in court. The judge saw and heard everything that could possibly be said or heard about it. That was part of his considerations when he sentenced me to the minimum.
I had a commissioner named Ferguson twice. He's a former prosecutor. And he will conduct the hearing like he's interrogating somebody. This guy's doing your hearing. That's very disturbing.
You've come to prison because you were not acting like a human being on the outside. Now you're inside. We want you to act like a human being.
Ferguson was a pit bull. He told you straight up that he didn't like you. He didn't like what you were in jail for. And if he was straight to the point.
You have some individuals who are very cunning, who can sit there and BS you for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, and tell you everything you want to hear. And if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the chops to assess someone who has perhaps dedicated their life to criminal activity, someone else may get raped or murdered. And that's your responsibility. I look at their demeanor, I listen to the sound of their crackling voice, I see perhaps tears in their eyes. Some are true tears, some aren't.
I asked another commissioner, have you considered the fact that during my incarceration, I've done X, Y, and Z? And the commissioner picks up my file and goes, oh yeah, we read all that. Just flips through it like a phone book. Like, yeah, we read all that, and drops it back down the table and looks at me like, okay, now what?
In prison, some of us focus on changing who we are. We're consumed with helping others make this same transformation. And for it not to have any value, when you go to a parole board, no value whatsoever. That almost enrages you, that they could be so callous.
You're in on a term of from 6 months to 10 years for assault with a deadly weapon?
Yes, sir.
The whole parole scheme was first invented in New York State.
Why is it that you didn't learn from your first incarceration?
So this is the epicenter for the system, and yet it's one of the worst now. I remember a time that parole was a fair system back in the 80s, but somewhere along the line it got into the punishment era.
Good to see you. Nice to see you. Want to shake things up here. How are you?
George Pataki practically rode into office on the backs of guys like me.
I will be putting before the legislature measures to eliminate parole for violent felons. Violent felons belong in jail.
They just started like blatantly just across the board denying parole for guys like myself.
During the Pataki administration, the release rates completely flip-flopped. If you had, let's say, 3 out of 4 who came before the board getting out, 3 out of 4 under Pataki stayed in. He did an absolutely brilliant job. The justice system cannot survive the hug-a-thug mentality, meaning you've had a bad childhood, let me give you a hug, now you can go free.
My kids, they just didn't think I was ever going to see me out. Seeing me in prison was it. There were times when I thought that I was never going to get released. I personally know men who are being hit by the parole board and they're in their 70s.
If you've been in prison for 20, 30 years, people are not a high risk to commit murder again or to commit arson again. The research is so clear on this and has been for years. What you might have been as an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old or even a 20-year-old is not the person sitting before you today as a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old, or a 70-year-old. And we are running geriatric institutions in America right now because we're not releasing people.
So people might say, oh, you have to let them out, you have to let them out. That's the only thing that matters. No, it's not. I have members of the public who feel that the component of retribution has not been satisfied.
All I could think about was being able to see my son, my grandchildren, at least live some semblance of a life, because I grew up in prison.
After the first few boards, I stopped telling my wife I was going because it was just messing her up. She'd get all excited and get ready for you to come home, and then you get denied. After about 6 boards, I stopped telling anybody I was going to board. I would just go.
When you open up regularly and you're denied, it's kind of bulky because there's an appeal paper in there as well. So when I picked it up, I said, this is light. This is not bulky.
I'm looking in the envelope, I'm trying to feel around, make sure, well, is this real? There's no appeal? There's no appeal papers, no appeal papers?
I look and it says, parole granted. But when I went to go look at my name, I couldn't read it. I was so in disbelief that this could not be happening to me. I have been waiting for this for so long that I had to go ask somebody else to do me a favor. Tell me whose name is on this piece of paper.
Was this real? Was it real?
I felt such a rush come through my body, like all the oxygen left my feet.
In the end, I appeared at 10 parole hearings. I ended up doing like double the minimum sentence.
My eligible release date was 1996, and I was released in 2018.
I had just turned 28 when I was arrested. And when I was released, I was 66 years old.
Why do you think you were eventually released?
I think the determining factor for me being released was the fact that a new commissioner was the lead interviewer in my case.
Jose spent his life organizing in prison to help other people. Nowhere else believes that you shouldn't be forgiven and that you don't have the right to move on just because you did something heinous at one fixed point in your life.
I left a lot of good men in prison, and some passed away. So, this is personal for me.
I have 4 grandsons. My biggest thing is when I see them, I hug them for a really, really long time. And they get to the point where they're like, Grandma, Grandma. I'm like, okay, wait a minute.
I think the best part of being out is I get to be me boldly. Because before you be you too boldly, even if it's positive, there's a possibility you can get locked up.
I think the best part of probably being released, you're not telling people, not telling you to lock in, lock out, not telling you when you could eat, when you could sleep.
Most people don't even know I was incarcerated. Unless you tell them, they don't know you're incarcerated. They treat you like a regular person. So, I act like I always wanted to be. I'm the person I always wanted to be. I'm only better, and I'm getting better every day.
Wow. Every time I watch that film, I get so emotional. So now we can begin our panel discussion and just go a bit deeper, talking to directly impacted advocates, lawmakers, and a person who works in the legal field surrounding issues of incarceration. My name is Tiana Taylor. I'm the co-director of policy and communications with the Release Aging People in Prison campaign. I'm also the daughter of an incarcerated father who's been in for nearly 2 decades now and will soon go before the parole board. Now I'll pass it off to my lovely panelists to introduce yourselves, starting with Luana.
Hi, my name is Milana Snipe Tucker. I am a community leader with Releasing Aging People in Prison out of Queens. I am directly impacted. My husband has been incarcerated for 34 years for a crime he did not commit. And now I will pass it to Jose.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Jose Saldana, the director of that Release Aging People in Prison campaign. I'm also formerly incarcerated. I was released from prison in 2018 after 738 years. And I'll pass it on to Sue.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here. My name is Steve Zeidman. I'm a professor at CUNY Law School and co-direct the school's Defenders Clinic, where we work with people who are serving life sentences, trying to figure out ways to extricate people from the near certainty of perishing in prison, whether by resentencing motions in court, medical parole, clemency, or helping people prepare for parole or appeal parole denials. And I am glad to be with you tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I am Assemblywoman Maritza Davila. I am the co-sponsor of the elderly parole bill, and I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And I especially was touched by the video and very impressed by a lot of your successes. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I also just want to acknowledge that we have our other lead sponsor for the elder parole bill here, State Senator Brad Hoylman. Thank you so much for being here today. So now I'll go into our questions. And the first question, anyone up here, feel free to answer this one. And that is, what are the bills? What is the elder parole bill and the fair and timely parole bill? And what is their legislative history?
Well, I can speak about the elderly parole, and I'm sure that my counterpart, if he wants to come up and sit next to me, it would be extremely helpful. So the elderly parole bill, of course, is an elderly, is exactly what it is. People who have been incarcerated for more than 15 years, it would give them an opportunity to go in front of the parole board and plead a case, right? What they have done during that time that they've been there. Most people that go in front of the parole board that have a life sentence, as you can see by the video that was shown, have been there for over 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, and they don't get the opportunity that they wait until their exact sentencing to be able to go in front of the parole board. This will require anyone over the age of 55 and older to get a fair hearing, to be able to go in front of the parole board and plead their case. And it will also, if they are denied, they have up to 60 days to put an appeal. And it will also require them to go, if they are denied in the appeal as well, they have up to 2 years to come back and go in front of the parole board once again. So it's just a matter of not allowing our elderly people, as you can see, most people that were on that screen are elderly, and we are aware that when you're 55 and older, recidivism is 2%. I mean, there has been studies that have been done. And I want to speak on a personal level. I have family members that have done 25 years. 25 years, went in at the age of 19 and came out at 40-something years old. And they're doing extremely well. So we have to be a little more cognizant of the fact that, you know, this, if we really, really want to think about restructuring the criminal justice reform system, we need to start giving people opportunities, and that is not what we're doing. And furthermore, we're not honestly providing the services that they need to stay healthy within those prison walls. People are dying at a fast rate. I mean, the lifespan there is 59 years old. That's not normal. So just in layman terms, that's what the bill practically does. Sure.
Thank you so much. And it's so wonderful to be here with RAP and advocates and Steve Zeidman. And of course, Jose, you know, really thank you for your, I guess, what to call it, iconic advocacy, because I think RAP has taken a bill that was really just a kernel of an idea, just a small dot of light, and turned it into a huge flame of hope and the possibility of justice for so many incarcerated individuals. 10,000, which the number has increased since this documentary was made. And we know that the study that of recent by Columbia University showed that there's been over 500% increase in deaths behind bars of people 55 and older since the 80s, and 56% of deaths behind bars in the last decade were of older people. And so we are, as the Assemblywoman described the bill completely accurately, and I look forward to championing it with her come January. We're facing headwinds right now in this election, as I think people know. Lee Zeldin and his band of opponents to our efforts are going to, I think, face their own reckoning come November 8th. But it's either going to go one direction or the other. And even if it cuts against our efforts in terms of criminal justice reform, I think, interestingly, we might have even a better shot when we are truly a deep blue conference in both the Assembly and the Senate. And we lose a lot of baggage of the colleagues of both of ours who have prevented this bill from getting a vote in committee and moving to the floor. Because I know that there are so many in my conference who have signed on as co-sponsors and others who are willing and ready to vote for this legislation because of the personal stories that have moved them, because no longer do we believe, as that former parole officer said, that our system is about retribution. How on earth he was ever allowed to serve with that kind of mindset is beyond the pale. And because we know that evidence-based decision-making, which is, I think, what Democrats in both houses are focused on, have shown that not only is this a just cause, but it's a smart policy that will return individuals to their communities where they can support their families and neighbors and save our system from an internal collapse because of the weight of running a geriatric prison system as we have been for so many decades in New York. So again, thank you for everyone for your advocacy. And I'm really hopeful that this will be a watershed year come January for parole justice, and in particular, this legislation, and of course, Fair and Timely, which we don't sponsor, but which is the parallel effort to achieving transformative change on this front. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Thank you both so much for that, and thank you for leading up the elder parole bill. We will do everything we can together to win parole justice in 2023. Maybe Jose, would you like to talk about fair and timely parole?
Sure, I would like to first go back to the elder parole. The elder parole bill was actually written by people who were incarcerated. And it was written because they were part of a crisis that was happening in our prison system. Every 3 days, someone dies in our prison system. That someone is usually an elder person. And it's usually somebody who's black or brown. Just imagine that. That's a health crisis created by racist policies. And another thing is that the average age of death is 58. That's a health crisis. This bill was created to counter that health crisis. It would give men hope. 55, person reaches 55 and serves 15 years would be entitled to a parole release consideration. This is a moderate, very moderate approach to addressing an inhumane health crisis in our system. I speak about the fair and timely parole bill. As you see in the video, people were being denied multiple times. I know someone who was denied 14 times. 14 times, almost added a quarter of a century to the time that he was given by the courts. The fair and timely parole bill would stop this perpetual punishment by the New York State Parole Board. It would require them to determine their decision to release based on who the person is today. And if they determine that this person is a risk to public safety, that they cannot use exclusively the crime of conviction. It has to be a current risk to public safety that denies the person parole. Again, this is a reasonable, moderate bill. It does not guarantee anybody's release. All it does, it makes this process meaningful and fair. It gives people a fair opportunity to return back to their family and be productive in their communities. The combination of these two bills go a long way to addressing this inhumane health crisis that exists today in our prison system and will only get worse if we don't do something about it.
Thank you so much for that. So next up, I will ask a question that I want you all to answer within your own kind of respect. So of course, Milana and Jose will answer as impacted folks. And so the question is, why are these bills important, both for those personally impacted by incarceration and for criminal legal reform, racial justice, and liberation work more broadly?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding, but yes, I apologize.
Let me take this off, maybe that'll help. So the question is, why are these bills important, both for those personally impacted by incarceration and for criminal legal reform, racial justice, and liberation work more broadly?
Well, I want to speak on a perspective of being an elected official, all right? Because we have a two-pronged kind of, me personally. I think about, again, my family members, and I also think about how that fits into the political world. And I have to tell you that, and as our senator said, he had to leave, it was his birthday, so he apologizes for that. We struggle, you know, if it weren't for the help of the activists of RAP and all of you coming to shed light, right? Some of us may live in a bubble that have never experienced anything. And unless you speak to them, you'll never know. You've done a great job doing that, by the way. But as always, this has always been politicized. This is a topic that you can see going back to the days of time, like whoever takes on the reign or is running for governor or is, this is the topic that they pick on the most, right? We are aware that it's not going to be an easy bill to pass. And we are going to have to champion it and really debate this bill like no other, especially in today's time. But moving forward, and in terms of criminal justice reform, it is the right thing to do. It's just that simple. People want to make it more complex than what it is. You have to understand the criminal justice system is about money. Money. Every incarcerated person, I think we pay like $180-something thousand a year. Could you imagine if we took that money and converted that into scholarships, education, housing, mental health? If we converted that money for each person that is incarcerated, and I'm not saying, you know, again, we have a parole board that makes that decision. But imagine if we could get 10 people out, how much money would that be? 10 people out and help them get their lives together. Obviously, in a more broader sense, we would probably be the leading state in criminal justice reform at this point because we have made a lot of strides. And as you can see, we have been also persecuted for it because we are elected officials and we have to take all the hits that comes with making decisions and fighting a bill. But I truly believe that futuristically, this will set the bar for other injustices that are happening within the criminal justice system. Nobody wants to talk about really what happens behind those walls. People are being abused physically, sexually, mentally, emotionally, and then you want to kind of keep that going for all these years. We've had doctors come to us that have worked in the prison system, okay, saying we have to do something. We have to pass a piece of legislation that do not put pressure on the doctors to put down on the dotted line, oh, he just fell down the stairs, when that's not true. We get these things. I've heard it in the past 10 years. I've heard so much. And so when we are battling these type of legislation and we're trying to pass them, you're always going to get someone that's going to resist. And there's always going to be a bunch of people that are, for it. The one good thing that we have going for us is that both houses at this point are both run by Democrats. So if we don't do this now, shame on us. Shame on us. I'm here. I don't know if I answered all your questions, but if I missed something, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone others like to answer this question?
Well, for me personally, the elder parole bill, my husband went to prison when he was 23 years old. He is now 57 years old. Fortunately, we did just go to the parole bill on yesterday, but the bill is important, not just for my husband, like Jose spoke about, and Assemblywoman Davila spoke about as well, is that if you've been sentenced by the courts for 15 years to life or 25 years to life, there's no reason, especially if the individual or the incarcerated individual has completed whatever programs they offer to them, they've stayed out of trouble, they can show that they have a family to go home to, They've learned some type of skill while they were in there. And there's no reason for anyone to have cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, or now COVID, and still have to be sentenced to die behind the wall when their sentence have been completed. Now, as far as the fair and timely parole bill, again, I am not who I was 10 years ago. I'm not the same person I was last week. So our justice system states when an individual is taken to trial, they're found guilty and convicted, and then they're sentenced. So I've sentenced you to a term of 15 to life or 25 to life. But what we're asking for, if that individual prior to meeting that term of their end of their sentence, they have proven that they can come back out in the streets or come back into society and be the individual what the system was supposed to help make them rehabilitate. We wouldn't be spending the money that Assemblywoman Davila just mentioned about every day. We could be spending that money on programs for our children and our young people not to be carrying guns around or shooting each other up and innocent bystanders getting shot. Or we could be spending that money on mental health where people are not shoving individuals in the subway tracks just because. So the system needs to be corrected. These bills are important because not only will it save and change the lives of the individuals who are currently serving these times, it will also help save our country, save our state. New York is a big state. And as a contextual, I can't even speak because I'm getting angry thinking about the video of the ones that did, Alejo did all so many extra years for what? And like the commissioner said, is like when they were sentenced, they did their time. Alejo said he had a master's degree. Now, why would I have a master's degree or come back outside in the society and I want to kill or shoot or commit another crime? I've done my time. I've proven to you that what I went to prison for, I was able to change. That's what it's supposed to be about, changing the individual. So these bills are important to us and they need to be passed because I have a 23-year-old, I have a 12-year-old, I have nieces and nephews, and I don't want any of this to ever happen to them or any one of your loved ones. I think I'll stop there because I'm getting angry.
Thank you so much for sharing, Noana, and I understand these topics are so hard to deal with. And you know, one thing that these bills would do once they get passed is save the state $500 million. There's a study conducted by Columbia Center for Justice that says that these bills would save our communities money that could be reinvested for mental health care, for proper education, for housing, things that are desperately needed to stop some of these things that we're seeing going on. People like Alejo can come home and do great things in their community. They do not need to be needlessly denied parole. So now I want to ask Steve, if you would like to answer, how does parole justice affect us all?
Oh my, well, I think if you widen the lens, you could just take what Noana just said and say, this is the reason we need to pass these bills. And my experience when you speak to certain people about it, and I'm just talking to people who don't have any awareness or experience or knowledge, they think about it as text, language of the people, as opposed to what we're really talking about is reuniting families. Nonsense. With children united with parents, repairing, restoring, enhancing public safety. But I think from my perspective, you read so much about mass incarceration, and it seems to be on everybody's lips, this idea that we acknowledge there's a crisis of mass incarceration that has been inflicted upon communities of color. And the question becomes what to do about it. How do you rectify? How do you redress? And it's staring us right in the face. One easy way is to correct the parole board. And I use that word correct quite intentionally because it's always been sadly ironic to me that we have, the parole board is part of the Department of Corrections. And frankly, what needs to be corrected is the corrections itself, but in particular, its own parole board. So to me, I see these bills as leading to decarceration on the road to abolition. We have fair rules, make more people eligible, make the standard for release more just and decent. More people come home, we get closer and closer to the dream of abolition, which is so long overdue. So to me, this is part of that. This is part of dealing with mass incarceration.
Thank you so much for that, Steve. And I know we're running a little bit low on time, so I will just ask one more question for Jose. What can people who are interested in getting involved do?
Everyone can be a part of the solution to these problems. These racial injustice impacts all of us because racial injustice leads to other injustices. Marginalized people being mistreated, being discriminated. So if we all can come together and address this issue of racial injustice, because when it comes down to it, what we're talking about is a moral issue. It's not a legal issue. Everyone can be involved in this movement. We are the RAP campaign, that's RAPP campaign.com. That's our website. You can get involved. You just looking up all our events, upcoming events. We have some RAP members here, including myself and Luana. You have David George, you have Jared. You can contact them right after this meeting. Contact them, leave your contact information. We will get in contact with you. We will collaborate with you. We will help you become involved in this movement. But this movement is not just about a legal movement. This movement is to dismantle the entire racist criminal legal system of New York State. If we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. We can't leave this for the next generation. And I'd like to just add that these two bills will spare the next generation from having to languish in prison for 3 and 4 decades. Spare young people that are 16, 17 years old coming in and receiving death sentences. We will protect them by passing these two bills and advocating for racial justice in this state.
Thank you so much, Jose. I think that's the most important part of things like this, how we get involved, how we work together to end systems that are toxic to our communities and to our families. Now, I do just want to take a few moments to ask if we got any questions on Zoom or if anyone here has any questions for our panelists. Okay, so it looks like we didn't get any online questions and folks don't have any questions. So I'll just wrap us up by saying, just like Jose said, we're all here to get more folks involved in the movement. We do advocacy days up in Albany where we gather as many people as we possibly can. We rally through the halls and we demand parole justice, and we will be doing that January 18th of this year. So, and we take big buses, a bunch of big buses from New York City, Buffalo, all across the state. We're looking to have hundreds of people, thousands if we can, up in Albany, just to let people know that our loved ones will no longer languish behind bars and our families need to be reunited. So if anyone's interested, either online or in person, please let me, Noana, Jose, our RAP folks in the audience, Jared and Dave, just let us know and we'll get you connected. Thank you so much.